This is from a series of interviews that I shot in January of 2021 for the Mind, Body, Soul documentary project, where we will be hiking the Continental Divide Trail and exploring the effects that nature has on our well-being. To find out more about the project, visit mindbodysoulfilm.com.
My name is Dale Painter, and I live here in Newaygo. And this is kind of about an hour north of Grand Rapids, kind of where the national forests start in Michigan, the Manistee National Forest. So the Muskegon River runs through our town, and we're kind of out on a side creek, Brooks Creek Ravine, and kind of a neat place just to come and hang out. So, and when our kids started growing up, we took them on a lot of hikes and just around Michigan. We didn't start backpacking until our daughter was 7 and our son was 12. Heather and Matt, and we decided we took off for a summer and went west. And we decided, so we're going to do that, we might as well do some backpacking as well, because we'd always wanted to do that, but we'd never done any. So with the 2 kids, we backpacked into the Grand Canyon. Was our first backpack. And then Yosemite and Olympic and up in the North Cascades, and that just hooked us. And it was interesting because the kids were enough far apart, and Heather was adopted and was a very hyperactive child, and a lot of ups and downs and mood swings, and our son was just kind of even-keeled like this. So they really had so little in common when we're here. But when we got into the backcountry and we went backpacking, there were no other distractions. And so suddenly those kids then had to work together, and they had to find ways to keep themselves entertained. And so it became that all through those high school years, that was their bonding time. I think it built self-confidence, no doubt, and it's just those family. It's kind of that family tradition, the things that we can always look back on, that they had that together. Heather kind of evened out, and Matt kind of came down, and it was just like so. That was always very special. So we did that all through their high school growing up years, and then when the kids got out of the house, Kathy and I decided we really wanted to do a little bit more extensive backpacking. So we decided we started working on the Pacific Crest Trail, and so we started up at the Manning Park in Canada, back when you could go across the border into the States. And we just started for the next probably 10 years. We just spent our summer vacations out knocking off another section of the PCT. And when you hike as a couple, as a married couple, that's when I think that that's when it really builds. I think that's built our marriage. Again, working together and planning together, and overcoming the uncomfortable times, dealing with it when one of you have an injury, have to go off the trail, which means that the hike's over for both of us. And I think just that companionship. Again, you're out there just by yourselves, and I think you communicate at a different level than when you do back home, and the day in, day out, work-a-day world kind of thing. Something we always look forward to. We plan during the whole year. So that's the benefit, I think, of a couple: the relationship building and the bonding and the feelings of accomplishment when you did it. We just have found that throughout our marriage, we need to be interdependent. If a marriage is going to work, it has to be interdependent. You have to be dependent on each other. Can't have such a strong identity here and go your own ways and still think you're going to have a relationship. Somehow there's got to be some give and take and compromise, and that's not a negative thing, but interdependent rather than totally dependent. And you have separate identities, true. But it gets blended, and you become one identity. Still have your own gifts and strengths and talents and all that sort of thing, but in backcountry, it's a good place for them to come together. Again, the downside is, as I've done solo hiking, is that when you're solo, I don't have to depend on anybody else. You can go as many miles as you want to go. You kind of are just by yourself, so there's a solitude that I really love when I'm just as a solo backpacker. But again, there's things you miss too, because you can't share it with anybody.
Which trails have you hiked?
Yeah, so I think the PCT was really our first long distance. And so I've done, so Kathy and I had hiked that, hiked it all the time. I'd done the section from Campo to the High Sierras, a 700-mile section there by myself. She didn't want to do the desert stuff. Well, 3 years ago, it's not 2017, I thru-hiked the whole trail at the PCT. North Country Trail here in Michigan, some up in Minnesota on the North Shore, bits and pieces on the Continental Divide Trail through especially southern Colorado, the San Juans, Wiminuche Range. Yeah, and then just the other backpacks, just kind of, Grand Enchantment Trail was after I got off the PCT. So many people on the PCT that I just really wanted to have a little more wilderness kind of experience with a little more challenging. So the Grand Enchantment Trail goes from Phoenix to Albuquerque, and part on trails, part on off trail, up some canyons, and just some really awesome kinds of experiences. So I did about 500 of that 700 miles of that trail. Got myself in some trouble. Got a good taste of humble pie, and got lost pretty good. And anyway, that was a whole other set of experiences too. So Grand Enchantment, and then last summer I decided I just hiked all of the 1,100 miles of the North Country Trail in Michigan, the length of Michigan. So that's special.
Have you ever sought out healing in nature?
Yeah, I think there's times where, and I can think of one of the times that when Kathy and I hiked across Oregon, she had come off I guess both of us come off an experience of a job situation that she was primarily Kathy that was in it, loved the job and did a wonderful job at it, but a bunch of political things came up that, the long and the short of it, she had to leave that job. She couldn't continue on in the way that she was fulfilling, and that was very, very difficult for her and for us. And so much of the time of our hike across Oregon was a healing time, and to get a new perspective, to process it together, to lay awake in the tent that night. There's no phone going to ring. We're not going to be able to pick up a phone tomorrow and find out what more has happened in the job, or are they going to offer. We basically could come to grips with it together because there were no distractions out there. I mean, that was a time of healing. We came out of that, I think, with a different perspective of that situation, and I think then eventually made the best out of that situation, and not let it consume us with bitterness. And so there's a cleansing, I think, that happens in the backcountry. And I think a lot of people head to the backcountry purposefully to try to overcome things that they've had in their lives that have bad relationships or major losses, or I think so. People and they can find that healing in the backcountry. I think as we've made life decisions at many of the points of our marriage where we had to make major decisions, the best place we do is when we're in nature. Whether it's going over walking on the beach at Lake Michigan, so it doesn't have to be necessarily backpacking, but there is a refreshment there that says all these things will pass because look, this is all still here. And it was here yesterday, and it'll be here tomorrow, it'll be here 100 years from now. There's something eternal about that puts our problems into perspective, I think.
What kind of lessons have you learned in nature?
The values of simplicity, the values of reverence, the values of humility, because nature, and especially distance backpacking, makes you humble. It puts me in my place. It realizes I'm not in control. Somebody else is in control. Those are real important lessons, I think, for me personally, because we're not in control. Because we're not God. We're not. We like to think we are. We think like we can control everything. The reality is we are part of His creation, He has a plan for us, but sometimes it's not our plan. So sometimes it's important to be reminded of that. Sometimes he does that by slapping us across the head and saying, "You idiot, what did you do that for?" Other times it's more subtle, and sometimes it's just a matter of looking around and seeing and saying, "Wow, I'm so much, I'm, and then it allows me then to, I guess, to be humble and to look to other people for answers and help, not bulldoze myself through a situation. It prevents me from being arrogant and self-centered and egotistical, although I'm probably all of those things. All of us are at some point. But I think it helps us to be more genuine, be more real, more transparent, when we don't have to put on the masks and have to live the facade. We can say, when you make a mistake in the backcountry, you don't have anybody else to blame but you, usually. When you come up on a solution, or when you make the right choices then to get out of that, you understand that it just builds you up and gives you more confidence for next time.
What is the purpose of nature in our lives?
And where do we fit? Where's the proper fit? Where's the proper fit for me in nature, in the world? And I agree. I don't think we can become hermits and just kind of withdraw from it. I think we get into nature and we come. It's an example. Every point in Jesus' when he was on the earth, he sought out wilderness places at key times when he had to sort things out about what he was going to do next. Next phase of his ministry, he retreated to the wilderness. So I think it's the same with us. We retreat to the wilderness to understand ourselves and to get in touch with what we're being led to go, but we need to go back into the world. And the wilderness can prepare us to go back in the world, not to escape the world. And I think some people use the wilderness in that way. They want as an escape. And if that's all the farther it goes, then they're not going to be any farther ahead. So I think you're exactly right. I think we have to get there, we have to understand it, but we still return to the world to be disciples, to be the part of the problem of the solution rather than continuing to be part of the problem.
So how are you trying to be part of the solution?
Yeah, Kathy and I have led mission teams to Mexico, Matamoros, across the border from Brownsville, Texas. 20 years. We've led teams from West Michigan down to build houses for people that live in a squatters camp area that's originally it's surrounded a big, huge garbage dump, and people there would forage off the garbage dump to survive. And we were attracted by a person from a Mexican American who his dream was to start building houses for these people. And so we got connected with him, and ever since we've spent about 5 weeks a year in Matamoros building houses for these people that the dump's closed down now, so they're not around it, but it's basically shanty towns and squatters camps. And we go down and we build simple, 12 by 20, 12 by 24 size houses with a steel roof and a cement slab that gets people off the dirt, and builds houses for them, with them, not for them, with them, because most of the time they work with us, but more important, they minister to us, because we learn what their lives are about and what kind of deep faith many of them have, and how they can be happy with so little and we get unhappy with how much we have. One time a little lady just said, "I pray for you every day. You Americans, I pray for you. How hard it must be for you to believe, because you have so much. We have so little, so we have to depend on God. You have so much, so it must be so hard for you to believe." And we're going, wow, is that the truth? Those are the kinds of things that are, we need to be reminded of that. But we think we have all the answers, but we get blinded to. So,
What do you think the role of nature is in our society?
So much of our societies depend, especially U.S. society, has to do with what can nature do for us? What can it do, and what can nature do, for raw materials, but also sometimes we just say, what's the benefit? What's the scenic beauty? We'll preserve this place because it has scenic beauty, and it'll help the economy of all the communities around it. You can't have just an island of a sanctuary here with cars running all around it, because that's not what God created nature to be. So I think there's a bit we compartmentalize, and we're good at doing that. Well, when I do my 2-week vacation, then I want to be in a pristine place, but the rest of the 300 and some odd days, it doesn't matter. So I think there's kind of a magical thinking about this, what nature is really about, of how somehow there's simple answers to this, and it's a very complex thing. So there's a lot of denial, I think, about what the value of nature is. And again, part of that is because people aren't out in it, I guess. I don't know. I don't know the answers to that, because how do you preserve nature? Can nature and economic development coexist? I would hope so. But,
how is nature valuable beyond economics?
and I guess I think I'm a believer in Jesus, and I realize that the Bible is so rich with the metaphors of the outdoors and nature, and because the people who wrote the Bible and who lived it, Christ's days, they were in nature all the time. So the rocks and the pathways, the metaphors about the path and the trail and all that sort of thing are so rich. And if you're not out in nature, you've lost the power of those metaphors and those lessons. I guess when we look at nature, it's just not the physical world. It's creation, and being out in God's creation is just an inspiring kind of thing for us. I think that when we're out, it's like you're in a spot like this, and you can kind of lose yourself to the world. It's just you just really appreciate it. It's almost like just being in a holy temple. And I think all of us have experienced that. You kind of walk at the end of the day into a deep forest or whatever, and the sunlight's filtering through, and it's dead quiet, and it's like a temple. It's a sacred place, and it's just a moving kind of experience spiritually. And again, I'm a person of faith, so I know that that's God's creation, and that He's created this place, and He's brought me here for a special place, and it just kind of takes your breath away. And it doesn't have to be a spectacular mountain sunset or overlook or whatever. Sometimes it's just those simple kind of things when you realize the grandeur of creation and what it means to be in it. And you just feel like you want to worship. Kathy and I experience that together, but I really feel it when I'm by myself out there, because it's a place that I feel that I can go and to commune with Him, to actually be away from any distractions of regular life. Feel like I'm being led, feel His presence, and it's just so that has become a whole special dimension, I think, that makes the backcountry and backpacking especially very valuable, and it's something that's just really a core part of my life anyway, and has been it's something I always want. It's things I can't experience in church, although that's it's also God's temple, but it's different. But I experience things in the backcountry spiritually that I can never experience in richness and the depth and that I can't in many other ways. It's hard to explain that to people. It's hard to explain that to my fellow Christians when I come back. It's just something that it's a spiritual realm, so it's a sense of feel and the power of all that. So when I go out and I think about scripture, I take a verse or something along and I will meditate with it and walk with it all day. And when you're hiking 12, 13, 14 hours a day, you kind of put those things in your mind, and new insights come, and new revelations, and new understanding that are just are really important, I guess, to me, just my spiritual growth. So yeah, so the outdoors is a pretty special place for that. So yeah, I think it has to be experienced. I think people can, even over the years, I think I've had a head knowledge of some of that, and yet spirituality is much more than just a head trip or a logical argument or a convincing somebody that this is the way it should be. Much of that has to be, you have to do it. You have to get out there and do it. You have to get out there and take the risks, and be willing to look maybe beyond that being a rock, or that being a waterfall, or that being a grand forest, but realizing that there's so much more to that. There's so much more meaning that's behind that, because it's God. It's our Creator who's done that. And yeah, it's hard to explain that to me. And I never understood it, I don't think. And I think as years have gone by, I start to understand it more, and I start expecting it more when I go out. So then it doesn't a surprise anymore. And I start to try to find ways to enrich that experience as I'm hiking. But we'd start every morning with a song. And before we would break camp and we were going to have a kind of day ahead of us, we saw a song that reminds us of where we are. And as I've solo hiked, I've continued doing that. And it's a way of almost setting that as right the first thing before you even step foot on the trail, of setting that tone that this is a spiritual walk that we're doing. It's a pilgrimage, I guess. It's something special, and those songs kind of resonate with putting us into that touch with what this is all about, and making our spiritual life relevant to the trail as well. And sometimes those tough days, as you know, sometimes those tough days where you think you're not going to get through, sometimes be the most blessed times you have on the trail. It just sets the tone for that for an experience, more than just the physical challenge or the emotional challenges and the ups and downs, but that there's some spiritual blessings that can come out of that too. So, yeah.
Can nature and spirituality exist independently?
I think people can appreciate nature without seeing God. I think people can love nature without thinking that they're loving God as well. But for me, it's all the same. It's God is nature, and nature is God. I mean, it's hard to separate the two. Does everybody need it? I don't think so. Like I say, I'm not arrogant enough to think that a person who's grown up in the city all their life and but is rich in the arts or in music or intellectual pursuits, that his life is meaningless. A person can have a very rich spiritual life as a servant, and never have stepped foot in nature. I think we're here to help our fellow human beings, and so we're to be servants to those people, to love them as we've been loved. And yeah, we can learn those lessons in the backcountry, but I don't think that's the only place we learn them. For me, that's the most dramatic classroom I've had is nature. But that's not everybody. Like I say, I encourage people to get a taste of it, experience it, be out there. But I'm not, like I say, I'm not arrogant enough to think that that's the only classroom. Nature's not the only teacher. God can speak through lots of different ways. And I just would say, just don't turn your mind off for that dimension. I see some. And I think maybe my first contact with you was when I watched you on the Haydock Trail, and you were interviewing a variety of people, and they were, short interviews and things. But you know, the thing I said is that what about the spiritual dimension? And I think your comment was, yeah, how do you put that in words? You know, and sometimes it's very embarrassing even to ask the question. You're just going to be considered, oh, you're one of those kind, you're woo, or you're going to proselytize to me, or you're going to try to save me, or whatever. And I think that's so. Sometimes we're even afraid to ask the question or even talk in those ways because, yeah, and you said sometimes you don't have the words for that, and I think that's very true. I think it's very true, and yes, you know, I guess God surprises us. He meets us in ways, in times where we're not expecting it at all. And so sometimes, rather than just kind of discounting it and shoving it off and say, oh boy, I don't want to go there, sometimes you just let yourself go and experience it. You know, it's hard to explain to anybody when you come back. Say, well, how was your hike? Oh, it was great. Well, how far did you go? Oh, I went this many miles. Well, what did you see? What was your favorite part? But they know when you start saying, well, how did this start changing me? You know, and it's like, oh, okay, that's good, that's nice. I guess I'd say, Alex, I think most people are seeking it, the spiritual dimension. Is this all there is in life? Is how good I look and what kind of shape I am and how my body is, and if I get sick and work a job? And I think most people are craving something deeper in life, and they know there's something deeper in life. And is that the soul? Maybe that's the soul. That's something deeper inside of us. And is this all there is to life? Is there something more beyond? Is there something? So I think most people have a craving for that. I think people are seeking it. I think people are drawn to the backcountry seeking that. Many people out there, I think, are seeking something. Maybe they don't know what it is. Sometimes they don't know when they find it. Sometimes you think, well, if I get to the end of the trail, that, man, I'm going to be there and I'm going to kind of, it's like going up on the mountain and meeting the guru and he's going to give me have the answers to life. And yet, as you get to the end of the trail, you realize the trail keeps going. And you take some things that you've learned on the trail, spiritually and physically and emotionally and self-esteem wise, you take parts of that on the trail, and then as you are working the other pathways of life, whether it's, you start applying those things. And so I guess the answer to the question, yeah, I think most people are, I don't know they would be able to define what that is, but I think there's a craving there. And sometimes I think people have a stereotype of what some answers are, kind of the pat answers, and I'm talking spiritually as a Christian, the Bible thumping kind of in your face kind of, hell and damnation, fire and enemy, that sort of thing, and they don't want any part of that. And so sometimes what they do is, I think they turn off the entire message because based on what they're afraid of or their stereotype of what this person's going to do or what their attitude is towards what they're going to try to do to me, and I've seen all those hypocrites and I know what they are, and that has nothing to do with your faith. I think very few understand what this Bible message and what this thing about God is all about. So what do American society think of that? I think they're craving it. I think that everybody's got to find their own avenue. Some people find it in music. Some people find it in art. Some people find it in athletics. And those things some people find it in church. Some people find it when they're out hunting someplace. Some of us find it in the backcountry. There's lots of different avenues to finding that. But for me, the most dramatic way has been in nature. Do I encourage everybody to get out in the backcountry to experience it? No, because I know some people, it'll backfire. There's too many barriers for them, but they'll find it some other avenue. And I can just share what it's meant for me, and if it appeals to somebody else, to definitely come along, or try it. Just get out there and try it. You don't have to hike the Pacific Crest Trail, or you don't have the North Country Trail. You go out and hike, 5 miles someplace. Do an overnight. Get out there and just feel it and experience it, and just see what happens, and see if it's something that you're feeling led to have more of.
And don't forget to subscribe here on YouTube and follow us on social media to stay up to date with this project.